All right, so, right, you ready? Right? Thank you. All right, so where we left off was answering this question, what is so great about fire, right? We took a little bit of time and read the passage together about the various different ways that fire is going to be used throughout time to solidify its place as a very important tool in early human life, okay? One of the ways that it's going to solidify is through this agricultural revolution or through this Neolithic revolution, but we haven't even got there yet, so it's probably the best time as ever to go ahead and get there, okay? So where we are starting with this, the Neolithic Revolution, excuse me, starting back to kind of the very beginning, basically, okay? You can condense if you need to. It's probably information that you guys already have a general idea about, okay? Way before, so the Neolithic Revolution takes place around 10,000 BCE. That's where we're operating around, okay? But the cold temperatures of the Ice Age, especially in Northern Europe, where we're going to see a lot of Neanderthal and Homo sapien and Homo erectus species living, are ending in about 11,000 years ago. Okay? All around the globe, the climates are going to start to beginning to warm. And warming by means of like kind of what we think of as normal weather, basically. The entire globe was in an ice age. It's starting to warm up. Everything is melting, okay? Because everything is melting and because things are changing so rapidly, these nomadic people and these early species are moving from region to region, and they're finding brand new things as they go from each region, specifically new animals, new plants, and other natural resources that they can use for their hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Okay? The area in which they settled, like I said, might be information you already know, that's fine. The people or the area in which these people settled was known as the Fertile Crescent, okay? The area between the Tigris and the Euphrates River in what is now like modern day Middle East, North Africa. In this region in particular had the most of the rich plant life, excuse me, and a variety of new different animals that people from the northern portions of Europe are going to come and explore. A lot of people who settled in this area learned how to help and grow, or how to help the local plant life grow. So that's kind of the beginning of this Neolithic Revolution, or the beginning of the story of agriculture with early humans, is by the Neolithic, or excuse me, by the time the Ice Age is ending, people are settling in this Mesopotamia area or in this Fertile Crescent, and finding all these new things, learning how to care for them. That's kind of step one, right? If I wanted to create a garden or if I wanted to grow a garden, I got to understand the things that I'm planting and how to care for them, okay?
Yeah. Let's go. I'll go. I get an Airbnb. Where? Florida. You went to Indianapolis for the Final Four.
All right, so when we're talking about this, obviously we've explored our terms, which I'll give back to you today, by the way. We've explored our terms yesterday when we started our conversation about the Neolithic Revolution, but something that's kind of interchangeable with Neolithic Revolution is agricultural revolution. So the agricultural revolution is basically the time period in which we are in, that humans begin, more importantly, domesticating plants and animals, and no longer relied entirely on hunting and gathering. Important parts of that sentence. First, when we're domesticating animals and plants, that's kind of the process of agriculture, not just domesticating different animals. Or when we use the term domesticate, we talk about animals mostly, but domesticating plants as well. Again, learning how they work, learning how to deal with them, learning how to grow them effectively. And then no longer entirely relying on hunting and gathering. That does not mean that hunting and gathering just poof disappears. Okay, it just means that we are not relying solely on our bases, or the base of our existence relies heavily on hunting gathering. We can use other things now because we're growing, we're adapting, we're changing. Excuse me. All right, so the first crops when it comes to our learning of domesticating animals and domesticating these plants is are sprouts about because of the fact that there are no longer enough food and plants in a specific area. The people need to move to a new location. Okay? When the things that I've learned how to take care of kind of runs out, or if there's not enough to go around, we got to move around to find something different. However, let's say that the thing that I have found, so let's say that I settled in the Fertile Crescent and I learned how to take care of wheat, perhaps, okay? And wheat is very vital to my survival. Wheat is a really important thing, and I like it a lot, okay? When I'm forced to move out of that area for a variety of different reasons, I want to learn how to plant that thing in different places. So over time, they learn how to grow or how to plant and grow certain crops specifically in other places. So it wasn't really about the climate, or it wasn't really about the place that it was in. It was about how well can I figure out how to put it in a different spot. Okay? They were able to better control their food supply in this way. And at that point, they could begin to settle in one place. If I could find a spot that I am no longer forced to move, if I can do or domesticate all of the plants that I find vital to my survival in one place, then I can stay there. Blessed. Are you having a crisis? What are you doing? All right, so working off of those first crops. Sorry, it's kind of moving slow today, guys. It's just getting through it. Moving on with the first crops, most historians have evidence basically that the people who are domesticating these plants and the people who are finding the different ways to be able to settle are that the women are the answer to that basically. That the tides turning between hunting and gathering into an agricultural society, women are the natural selection or the natural person to take over this process. Men are still needed for hunting and gathering processes is the best way to put it, especially the hunting portion. So the next person to turn to take care of the things at the homestead is the woman, okay? This domestication and this role leads to a slow change as women began to raise and harvest plants while men continued to hunt for food. So this is not to say that women in these social groups and women in these early human societies, basically, didn't already have vital roles when it came to keeping the homestead or kind of keeping things under control while men went out to hunt for food. But this gave a new thing for them to do that's more vital to the society that they're in. It was something a little less taxing, a little less dangerous that women could participate in to provide for everyone. I was just very confused. I was like, what are you doing? That's fine. I was just confused. Fair enough. All right. All right, so with the first crops and with the development of this agricultural society comes a ton of trial and error, obviously, okay? I know literally nothing about farming or gardening, so if I were going to start a garden, okay, I would have a lot of failures before I was actually going to be able to figure it out, okay? I just don't have that green thumb, right? Same thing. I would say somebody wants to teach me, that's fine, but same thing with these early these early agricultural societies and these early crops is that there's a lot of trial and error. Farming is going to develop in several parts of the world at the same time, basically. Multiple different groups and multiple different climates are going to find different things. You got it, right?
Got it yet?
There you go. So farming is developing across the world at the same time in different climates, in different weathers, with different crops, meaning that there's a lot of trial and error happening at the same time, basically throughout the same or during this time period, okay? What early farmers grew depended largely on the region's climate. So I'm not going to be growing a whole lot of wheat in the Amazon rainforest, but I'm also not going to be growing a whole lot of anything in the Sahara Desert, okay? Researchers generally believe that barley and wheat are going to be the first crops that were planted, harvested, and domesticated. That because barley and wheat is generally pretty easy to harvest. It doesn't require a whole lot of water at any point in time, especially like really early wheat and barley that we see domesticated. Pretty easy to handle, anybody can go up and pull the wheat off of the crop, or pull the seed off of the crop, I should say. And it was an easy starting point. So just like if I was starting a garden and I have no idea what to actually start with, an easy plant to start with could be like, I don't know, a cactus. It doesn't die. I don't have to give it a whole lot of water. It's at least a start, right? This is their start. We just bought a house and my husband's like, are you gonna plant flowers and like plant things in the front yard? And I went, nope. He's like, why? I'm like, because I have no idea how to take care of it. Did you say your dad just bought a house? Nice. Nice. That's really funny. That's kind of scary because the house next door to mine just went up for sale and it's pending.
Really?
When did he buy it? That's a Waterloo. Oh my God.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. No, the house next door to mine literally went for sale on Monday and it was pending on Tuesday. Yeah. Like Cedarloo-ish, like do you know where the Pizza Ranch is on University? If you go like Cedar Heights that way, that's basically where I live. Like off of Green Hill. Kinda. I live next to Madison Teal. She lives in that area too. Yeah, ish. A little bit closer to Cedar Falls, but yeah, same road basically. Yeah. All right, so we have perfected domesticating plants, or we have at least making our way with domesticating plants, especially with wheat and barley and other things depending on the climate. The next step in this process, and going to be the more difficult step, is the domestication of animals, okay? So we've domesticated plants, we've kind of got that under control. The next step in this process to kind of entirely get rid of this hunting and gathering lifestyle is domesticating animals, okay? I don't want to go out and hunt, these large wolves or these large animals like horses or, whatever else is around, depending on where I'm at in the world. I don't feel like doing that. What if I can just keep them in one place where I am at, okay? The best example that we have of this when it comes to the domestication of animals is the domestication of wolves to dogs, basically, that it's widely recognized that dogs came from early humans domesticating wolves. Yes. Yeah. So dogs were most likely domesticated for a purpose, right? We weren't just like, oh, cute, I'm gonna keep it, okay? We were like, no, we need them for a purpose. Dogs were most likely domesticated by early nomads and early humans to help with hunting. Like, oh man, I don't want to do the hunting myself. Look at this scary ass animal. I'm gonna make it so it likes me and hunts for me, okay? Obviously, through time, that's going to change, just as we see with the chart here. But we still kind of have these domesticated wolves, technically, that will do the hunting for us sometimes. If we think of things like herding dogs or cattle dogs. Yeah. You said dire wolf. Just get a mix between like a husky and a, yeah, yeah. They're ginormous. Yeah. So the domestication of animals, like I said, the best example is basically dogs, or what we know as modern day dogs coming from the domestication of wolves through a variety of different efforts. Okay, but that's not the only way that we are domesticating animals. There are a variety of animals that we are going to domesticate to at least be comfortable with the human experience, so we can keep them in one spot for the long time. Okay. People began taming and raising farm animals about 10,000 years ago. So again, at the rise of this Neolithic Revolution, they basically did this by herding local wild animals and leading them into pastures that they could keep an eye on. We don't have, barns and barbed wire and all of these things to keep them intact. They basically just had to come and go as they pleased. And the way that we were going to keep them in one place is through food. Okay? Other than wolves being used for hunting purposes, goats and sheep were the first domesticated farm animals. Kind of the, I'd say like big five of the domesticated ones: goats, sheep, cows, pigs, horses.
No chickens?
Not yet. Chickens don't really show up on humans' radar for another like 3,000 years. Probably even longer.
What about doves?
Longer than that. They're still, so like we're still evolving from early humans. Chickens are still evolving from like early like Ice Age animals, basically.
So,
Okay. Goats and sheep are domesticated first because they can be used for a versatile reason. So, unlike wolves that are mostly used for like one thing, we're not really going to eat wolves. We can use them for pelts and stuff, but goats and sheep are used because they're versatile. They're not only used for food, but for wool, hides, and milk especially. But also the fact that their droppings, their manure, etc., was used to make the land more fertile to grow crops. So it was like a nice little cycle that we could continue using. Eventually, like I said, we'll get to pigs and cattle that kind of do the same thing, and we can use them for the same types of thing. And then we just get larger and larger with the herd animals. Eventually, we see in like, what would be modern day North America, we see horses and stuff like that. But when we're talking about basically that fertile crescent where most of the human population, I should say human population is, we're looking at goats, we're looking at sheep, we're looking at cattle. The other reason domestication of animals is such a big deal to the agricultural revolution is because these animals could be used as labor in the fields. So I no longer have to go out and pick every single piece of wheat. I can use them to carry a cart, or I can use them to kind of mow it down, depending on how far we are in the agricultural revolution. Yeah.
They didn't have wheels, I thought.
Yeah, they got wheels. We will get wheels eventually, but it's something that I can at least stick a pack, right? Or I can have them carry my clay pots and stuff like that so that I can put it in there instead of carrying it all by hand. We get further and further into it the longer we go through history, but at least it starts there.
Where are the Indians living right about now?
Probably the same thing in North America with different animals. Give it about 5,000 years and we can see more evidence of that, but about the same thing. Cool beans. All right, so the domestication of animals continues with the fact that living in close quarters, this isn't all rainbows and smiley faces, okay? Domestication of plants and animals is an extremely difficult process and comes with a lot of problems. Especially when you're living in close quarters with those animals, it can create a lot of problems, okay? We can even think about it today that if you lived with a bunch of cows, like if you slept in the barn with a bunch of cows, there'd probably be some problems.
They just knew and wake you up.
What if you lay in the poo? There's poop everywhere. What if one of them is sick and it gets you sick?
That doesn't happen. Cows don't have sickness.
So nowadays, you're right. Nowadays, it wouldn't be too much of a problem because we can't really do anything like that. However, back in the day, diseases can spread between animals and humans very rapidly, okay? Sometimes diseases spread from the animal populations to the humans and vice versa. Yeah. However, despite this problem, or despite all the problems that have presented itself, the domestication of animals allowed farmers to increase the amount of food they can grow, increase all of the stuff that they could keep, increase production, and so on and so forth.
Oh, we couldn't even go. Why would I go 4 or 5 times a week? I don't know. Me and Kel did. You know where you live this morning? Yes, somewhere. I'll talk to her about this. What area? So am I. Oh, yeah, right? Yeah. That's why you're stronger, unfortunately.
All right, so if we're wrapping up basically what we have talked about today, the key ideas of cultivation and domestication of plants and animals are as follows. That groups of hunter-gatherers lived for short periods in areas with plenty of natural resources. Women are the starting points of beginning to plant seeds from wild crops to get more food, the starting point of the agricultural revolution. And early people began to tame and breed animals, and the animals were used as sources of food, and as labor in the fields. These are just the key ideas from today, or the key things that we are taking away from our conversation today about domestication, about cultivation, about the start of the agricultural revolution or the Neolithic Revolution.
10,000 years though.
Yes, yep. We are in 10,000 BCE, so we are 10,000 from zero.
How do you know?
Because we can date it. We can use carbon dating with the stuff that we find.
The world's only 10,000 years old.
No, so zero is like the common denominator or whatever, and BC stands for before Christ in most things. It's used for something different in scientific terms, but 10,000 years before that point in time, we can see evidence.
How old is Earth?
Billions of years old.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Not a whole lot of billions, but like 4.
I'd say.
Are we done?
I'd say about 7,000.
Can we put the game on?
We're gonna do some independent work, and I can put it on while you guys are doing that.
I'd say that's about my guess. Maybe even less, probably like 6,000.
Score right now.
Look at Jay Bragger's post and look at the images.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter.
All right, so we've got our key ideas about cultivation and domestication. Where we're gonna move to next is I am going to show you guys a video about the agricultural revolution. It's not gonna take too long, it's like 10 minutes, something like that. Basically just hitting all the high points that we have talked about and explaining a little bit better the process of getting from hunting and gathering to full-fledged agriculture, okay? I know John Green talks pretty fast, but hopefully you guys will be able to just keep up and watch along. I don't ask you to write anything for it. I just want you to follow along. Just means just stay off electronics, pay attention, all that fun stuff.
Hello, learned and astonishingly attractive pupils. My name is John Green, and I want to welcome you to Crash Course World History. Over the next 40 weeks together, we will learn how in a mere 15,000 years, humans went from hunting and gathering. Is this going to be on the test? Yeah, about the test. The test will measure whether you are an informed, engaged, and productive citizen of the world. And it will take place in schools and bars and hospitals and dorm rooms and in places of worship. You will be tested on first dates, in job interviews, while watching football, and while scrolling through your Twitter feed. The test will judge your ability to think about things other than celebrity marriages, whether you'll be easily persuaded by empty political rhetoric, and whether you'll be able to place your life and your community in a broader context. The test will last your entire life, and it will be comprised of the millions of decisions that, when taken together, make your life yours. And everything will be on it. I know, right? So pay attention. In a mere 15,000 years, humans went from hunting and gathering to creating such improbabilities as the airplane, the internet, and the 99-cent double cheeseburger. It's an extraordinary journey, one that I will now symbolize by embarking upon a journey of my own. Over to camera 2. Hi there, camera 2. It's me, John Green. Let's start with that double cheeseburger. Ooh, food photography. So this hot hunk of meat contains 490 calories. To get this cheeseburger, you have to feed, raise, and slaughter cows, then grind their meat, then freeze it, and ship it to its destination. You also got to grow some wheat and then process the living crap out of it until it's whiter than Queen Elizabeth I. Then you got to milk some cows and turn their milk into cheese. And that's not even to mention the growing and pickling of cucumbers, or the sweetening of tomatoes, or the grinding of mustard seeds, etc. How in the sweet name of everything holy did we ever come to live in a world in which such a thing can even be created? And how is it possible that those 490 calories can be served to me for an amount of money that, if I make the minimum wage here in the US, I can earn in 11 minutes? And most importantly, should I be delighted or alarmed to live in this strange world of relative abundance? Well, to answer that question, we're not going to be able to look strictly at history, because there isn't a written record about a lot of these things. But thanks to archaeology and paleobiology, we can look deep into the past. Let's go to the thought bubble. So 15,000 years ago, humans were foragers and hunters. Foraging meant gathering fruits, nuts, also wild grains and grasses. Hunting allowed for a more protein-rich diet, so long as you could find something with meat to kill. By far the best hunting gig in the prehistoric world, incidentally, was fishing, which is one of the reasons that if you look at the history of people populating the planet, we tended to run for the shore and then stay there. Marine life was A, abundant, and B, relatively unlikely to eat you. Well, we tend to think that the lives of foragers were nasty, brutish, and short, fossil evidence suggests that they actually had it pretty good. Their bones and teeth are healthier than those of agriculturalists, and anthropologists who've studied the remaining forager peoples have noted that they actually spend a lot fewer hours working than the rest of us, and they spend more time on art, music, and storytelling. Also, if you believe the classic of anthropology, Giza, they also have a lot more time for Scooby pooping. What? I call it Scooby pooping. I'm not going to apologize. It's worth noting that cultivation of crops seems to have arisen independently over the course of millennia in a number of places, from Africa to China to the Americas, using crops that naturally grew nearby: rice in Southeast Asia, maize in Mexico, potatoes in the Andes, wheat in the Fertile Crescent, yams in West Africa. People around the world began to abandon their foraging for agriculture. And since so many communities made this choice independently, it must have been a good choice, right? Even though it meant less music and Scooby-Doo. Thanks, Dust Bubble. All right, to answer that question, let's take a look at the advantages and disadvantages of agriculture. Advantage: controllable food supply. You might have droughts or floods, but if you're growing the crops and breeding them to be hardier, you have a better chance of not starving. Disadvantage: in order to keep feeding people as the population grows, you have to radically change the environment of the planet. Advantage: especially if you grow grain, you can create a food surplus, which makes cities possible, and also the specialization of labor. Like in the days before agriculture, everybody's job was foraging, and it took about 1,000 calories of work to create 1,000 calories of food. And it was impossible to create large population centers. But if you have a surplus, agriculture can support people not directly involved in the production of food. Like, for instance, tradespeople who can devote their lives to better farming equipment, which in turn makes it easier to produce more food more efficiently, which in time makes it possible for a corporation to turn a profit on this 99-cent double cheeseburger. Wasn't delicious, by the way. It's actually terrible. And it's very cold. And I wish I had not eaten it. I mean, can we just compare what I was promised to what I was delivered? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's not that. Some would say that large and complex agricultural communities that can support cities and eventually inexpensive meat sandwiches are not necessarily beneficial to the planet or even to its human inhabitants. Although that's a bit of a tough argument to make, coming to you as I am in a series of ones and zeros. Advantage: agriculture can be practiced all over the world, although in some cases it takes extensive manipulation of the environment, like irrigation, controlled flooding, terracing, that kind of thing. Disadvantage: farming is hard. So hard, in fact, that one is tempted to claim ownership over other humans and then have them till the land on your behalf, which is the kind of non-ideal social order that tends to be associated with agricultural communities. So why did agriculture happen? Wait, I haven't talked about herders. Herders, man, always getting the short end of the stick. Herding is a really good and interesting alternative to foraging and agriculture. You domesticate some animals and then you take them on the road with you. The advantages of herding are obvious. First, you get to be a cowboy. Also, animals provide meat and milk, but they also help out with shelter because they can provide wool and leather. The downside is that you have to move around a lot because your herd always needs new grass, which makes it hard to build cities unless you are the Mongols. By the way, over the next 40 weeks, you will frequently hear generalizations followed by unless you are the Mongols. But anyway, one of the main reasons herding will be caught on in certain parts of the world is that there aren't that many animals that lend themselves to domestication. Like you have sheep, goats, cattle, pigs, horses, camels, donkeys, reindeer, water buffalo, yaks, all of which have something in common. They aren't native to the Americas. The only halfway useful herding animal native to the Americas is the llama. Not that llama. 2 L's. Yes, that llama. Most animals just don't work for domestication. Like hippos are large, which means they provide lots of meat, but unfortunately they like to eat people. Zebras are too ornery. Grizzlies have wild hearts that can't be broken. Elephants are awesome, but they take way too long to breed. Which reminds me, it's time for the open letter. Elegant. But first, let's see what the secret compartment has for me today. Oh, it's another double cheeseburger. Thanks, secret compartment. An open letter to elephants. Hey elephants, you're so cute and smart and awesome. Why you gotta be pregnant for 22 months? That's crazy. And then you only have 1 kid. If you were more like cows, you might have taken us over by now. Little did you know, but the greatest evolutionary advantage, being useful to humans. Like here is a graph of cow population, and here is a graph of elephant population. Elephants, if you just inserted yourself into human life the way cows did, you could have used your power and intelligence to form secret elephant societies conspiring against the humans. And then you could have risen up and destroyed us and made an awesome elephant world with elephant cars and elephant planes. It would have been so great, but no, you gotta be pregnant for 22 months and then have just one kid. It's so annoying. Best wishes. Right, but back to the agricultural revolution and why it occurred. Historians don't know for sure, of course, because there are no written records, but they love to make guesses. Maybe population pressure necessitated agriculture, even though it was more work, or abundance gave people leisure to experiment with domestication, or planting originated as a fertility right, or, as some historians have argued, people needed to domesticate grains in order to produce more alcohol. Charles Darwin, like most 19th century scientists, believed agriculture was an accident, saying a wild and unusually good variety of native plants might attract the attention of some wise old savage. Off topic, but you will note in the coming weeks that the definition of savage tends to be not me. Maybe the best theory is that there wasn't really an agricultural revolution at all, but that agriculture came out of an evolutionary desire to eat more. Like early hunter-gatherers knew that seeds germinate when planted, and when you find something that makes food, you want to do more of it. So what is this food? Maybe you want to do less of it. I kind of want to figure it out. That's much better. So early farmers would find the most accessible forms of meat and plant them and experiment with them, not because they were trying to start an agricultural revolution, because they were like, you know what would be awesome? More food. Like on this topic, we have evidence that more than 13,000 years ago, humans in southern Greece were domesticating snails. In the Franki cave, there's a huge pile of snail shells. Most of them are larger than current snails, suggesting that the people who ate them were selectively breeding them to be bigger and more nutritious. Snails make excellent domesticated food sources, by the way, because A, surprisingly caloric, B, they're easy to carry since they come with their own suitcases, and C, to imprison them, you just have to scratch a ditch around their living quarters. That's not really a revolution, that's just people trying to increase available calories. But one non-revolution leads to another, and pretty soon you have this, as far as the eye can see. Many historians also argue that without agriculture, we wouldn't have all the bad things that come with complex civilizations, like patriarchy, inequality, war, and unfortunately famine. And as far as the planet is concerned, agriculture has been a big loser. Without it, humans never would have changed the environment so much, building dams and clearing forests, and more recently, drilling for oil that we can turn into fertilizer. Many people made the choice for agriculture independently. Does that mean it was the right choice? Maybe so, and maybe not. But regardless, we can't unmake that choice. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so important to study history. History reminds us that revolutions are not events so much as they're processes. For tens of thousands of years, people have been making decisions that irrevocably shape the world that we live in today. Just as today we're making subtle, irrevocable decisions that people of the future will remember as revolutions. Next week, we're going to journey to the Indus River globe. Very fragile, our globe. It's a real globe. We're going to travel to the Indus River Valley. I'll see you then.
All right, so like I said, that video is just basically to sum up everything that we have talked about in a easier fashion, basically. I have one last thing for you that I want you to do before we leave. It is very similar to the things that we did yesterday. It is basically a little reading about domestication of animals and a question at the end. Easy peasy, nice little exit ticket for you, okay?